Welcome back to Movie Nights, guys. I'm here with my good friend Ed Glaser. You can find him at neonharbor.com. What kind of stuff do you do there?
All manner of things. Video essays on foreign remakes of popular American films is what my series Deja Vu is about. But I also do feature films and web series and animation and stuff. Some of which you've been involved in, I think. You look kind of familiar.
I think we've worked together in the past.
I don't think we've met.
Today we're going to be talking about Prince of the Sun, which falls under the category of things that you talk about.
Yeah, so, I was very pleased about that.
You know, we've been talking forever about doing a crossover of some sort, and I think Cynthia Rothrock has been like an element in several of these talks.
Yeah.
And it's been forever since I did a Cynthia Rothrock movie.
Oh, cool.
Like, I don't think I've done one since I started doing movie nights. So
it's about time.
It's about time. So for people who don't know, Prince of the Sun is a Hong Kong movie from... It was
91, I think?
91. It's a loose knockoff of The Golden Child. There's some elements that they've taken from that.
Eddie Murphy's best film.
Sure. What is the basic plot of Prince of the Sun?
So you've got this kid who is kind of the pseudo Dalai Lama, reincarnation of the Buddha. He is being sought after by a bunch of evil monks in Nepal, and once they get him and can kill him or something, then they can get ultimate world power. You know, one of those things, I guess. You kill the Buddha and then you can take over the world. Theoretically, it's up to Cynthia Rothrock to protect him and save him, but it doesn't end up working out that way. Instead, the kid falls in the hands of a wannabe bank robber from mainland China who has come to Hong Kong, and a lady who likes to beat children at school.
Miss! What? I need to go to the bathroom!
That was the thing that was so bizarre about this movie, because it's an action movie, but it is also a comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've seen any sort of Asian comedy, there is sort of a formula to them. But this one, it has this odd focus on abuse. You're supposed to laugh at women being thrown out of windows, children being hurled through the air, everyone just being miserable to everyone else, and somehow it ends up working.
I do laugh, yeah. I was really not expecting it. I was like, you told me a little bit about it beforehand, and that there's sort of this... I didn't think slapstick. I thought just sort of beating people up, in a crappy way. I thought that's not going to be that funny, but surprisingly, it's hysterical.
And apparently, it didn't do that well as a comedy in Hong Kong, where it was theatrical.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't do a lot of business, and from fans of this kind of cinema, the word I've kind of heard was that it's not very good. It's not very funny. The comedy is very sort of shrill and unpleasant. It's just not humorous enough. And I think what we realized in watching it was that it's really... Our enjoyment of it may have been buoyed by the English dub, which is both terrible and wonderful.
She told me she had no relatives and was very poor. I had to lend her $8,000 so she could rent a shrine. And now you show up. Goddamn bitch, death's too good for her. Oh.
I thought they were having a lot of fun with this dub. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it was funny because of the voices they added to it. It's either very cartoonish and strange, or very matter of fact. And they'll just state these really ridiculous things, like, this is just the way things are.
Mm-hmm.
You've got no trousers on! And you've got hairy legs! Yuck, it's disgusting!
Okay, you got a point.
The dubbing was done by, I think, the same people who were at a company called Ada Audiovisual. And they did a bunch of dubbing for the Godfrey Ho IFD cut and paste movies, where they would throw white guy ninjas into various and sundry Asian action movies or melodramas or whatever, and then they would also get the rights to these Korean produced anime movies and dub them into English and release them internationally. And I was just noticing a whole bunch of the same voices. John Culkin, who did a bunch of the IFD films, I swear I heard his voice, but a lot of the other voices, I'm like, I recognize you from like terrible Korean animation.
Space Thunder Kids! No one will ever again use terrorism to try to impose their will on the whole universe.
I'm glad you feel that way. Good luck to all of you.
Well, this, I think, was probably one of their better productions to dub over, because as ridiculous as the movie is, it has a really good production value to it. It looks great. The stuff that they film in Nepal looks gorgeous. They have great locations. The fight scenes are really well done, and Cynthia Rothrock is so good. Like, she is a badass in this movie. She is the straight man in this movie, and she just like kicks ass.
Yeah, the only downside is that she's not in enough of it. Which seems to be like the theme of movies we've watched with Cynthia Rothrock in them recently. Movies starring Cynthia Rothrock that don't really star Cynthia Rothrock.
Every time I've watched this, I've watched it like 3 or 4 times now, I always forget that she is not in the movie anymore until she shows up. I'm like, oh yeah, this is a Cynthia Rothrock movie, isn't it?
So I can tell you a little bit about that.
I want to hear this.
Okay, cool. So I spoke to a friend of mine, Mike Leader, who is a casting director and action director and does all kinds of cool movie stuff in Hong Kong. He was actually on set for this movie. He was young at the time. It was one of the first movies that he was on set for in Hong Kong. According to him, this was actually meant to be more of a Cynthia Rothrock vehicle, and they were pulling some of the plot elements from Golden Child because it had done fairly well in Hong Kong. And the production company had just recently done a movie with Cynthia Rothrock, and so she was at the peak of her sort of international fame. So they thought, well, let's do another one with her. But what happened was the director, Wilson Chin, he was doing this as a comedy, and apparently over the course of the film, a lot of the comedy was kind of being made up on the spot, or was being expanded while they were shooting.
That's kind of similar to The Golden Child, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit, where Golden Child was originally written as a serious movie for like as a Mel Gibson vehicle, and then they got Eddie Murphy on board instead, and they kind of like reworked it to be kind of a comedy and sort of failed miserably. Well, this one definitely put more of the focus on the comedy, so much so that they realized at the last minute that Cynthia Rothrock had just been sitting around on set doing nothing for most of the time that she had been there, while they were like coming up with these comedy bits for the other characters. They suddenly realized, oh my god, we paid all of this money for Cynthia Rothrock, and she's just been sitting there, and she has to get on a plane to go somewhere else in like a couple of days.
Wow.
We need to shoot a bunch of stuff with her really fast. So her last day was something like a 40-hour day of them doing this like playground fight scene and some of the other fight scenes and getting a whole bunch of her stuff done. And then it was like her and the other Caucasian actor, Jeff Falcon.
Was he one of the goons, that guy?
He was the like Caucasian goon.
Okay.
The like bleach blonde surfer dude goon.
Okay.
Who was also a Western martial arts. I think he did wushu, but it was like them doing all of this stuff and then like hanging out at an airport cafe at like 3 a.m. or something right before they have to catch their flight, and that was like their send-off. It was like, we just did this 40-hour day and we're dying.
I think they utilized her pretty well in the part she was in.
Yes. Oh yeah. Totally.
She did a great job, and I thought that the actors that were the main characters of this, the trio, were really good, and they carried it without her being in there. So I never felt like, all right, when's Cynthia Rothrock going to show up?
Conan Lee is the lead male actor, and I'd seen him before in a movie called Ninja in the Dragon's Den, where like he plays a ninja like who teams up with a Shaolin kung fu guy, and they have to fight bad guys and stuff, and there's a lot of really cool action sequences, and it's actually very funny as well. So that may be the only thing that I'd seen him in before, but I enjoyed that a lot. So when I saw his name in this, I was like, oh, well, that's good. And then the kids are really good too.
That's so surprising.
Yeah.
Because child actors, especially ones that young, can get really annoying really quick. And he had comedic timing, like it was actually funny and not just because it was a kid. You know, they have that great bit where he's like,
Look out, this guy's gonna punch you in the face.
Yeah, and when he was supposed to be straight and everyone was playing off of him, like he did that perfectly fine. And he, unlike the Golden Child, this kid carried the plot of this movie. The Golden Child, the main kid in that, is more of a plot device, and is not in it very much. It's basically just a goal to get to. But with this kid, he's in the classroom beating up the teacher, or he's teaming up with the thief and showing him how to hide and using his powers, and so he's actually doing things in this movie.
There were a couple of things that seemed like little nods to it, which, I mean, that's silly, right? Because, like, why would you nod to it when you're just ripping it off? But, like, there's some stuff with him, like, creating his own puppet show and, like, controlling the puppets and making them move around and dance, which is kind of similar to the beginning of Golden Child, where we see the kid watching a puppet show and we don't see who's controlling it, so it could potentially be him, because we see later on that he creates the little dancing Pepsi can guy. So there's that. There's a bit where he's talking to a little bird that's kind of similar to the bird that the Golden Child brings back to life at the beginning and who leads Eddie Murphy around. It's like little things like that, and then sort of the general, broader kind of ideas of the film. I mean, I suppose it's possible that both of those things were total coincidences. I would be surprised, but theoretically, like, I mean, they turned the bird thing into kind of a joke, because the idea is that the bird has come in and is telling the kid his life story. Like, oh, I lost my parents when I was here, and then this thing happened to me, and this thing happened to me. We don't see the bird talking, but the kid is telling the teacher all the things that the bird has told him.
It was not quite as clever as the many, many times that the characters talk about taking a shit, peeing their pants, various bodily function humor in this.
What now? I got a shit.
All of the swearing in it, which I'm sure is a little different in the original language. It makes me wonder who this is for, because there's so much in this that's really juvenile and kid-centered, but then there is a lot of adult humor that's clearly meant for an older audience. And so I guess it's not too surprising that it didn't have a great reception, because it would just come off annoying to adults.
Certainly that's my impression. I have seen films from China and Japan that have sort of similar I won't say problems, but it struck me the same way. Where I'm like, who is this for? Like, it's really gory, so that, like, and kind of like unpleasant in certain ways that don't seem kid-friendly, but the plot and the humor is very juvenile. So, pick one?
What are you doing? What's that chopper for?
I'm gonna go and rob. You inspired me.
I liked Conan Lee because his character shouldn't be likable, but he is likable enough.
Yeah, well, it's funny because he has that line early on where he's like, my name's so-and-so, I'm a thief, but I'm a good guy, really.
I'm gonna be a robber, but I'm a good guy, really.
And I'm like, oh, well, that's a case of informed attributes. Like, he's probably, like, gonna be written like crap, and he's just saying that, and we're gonna have to, like, deal with it. But no, you're right. It's like, oh, yeah, he really is likable.
This doofy thief with a heart of gold that is kind of too stupid to be malicious. You know, he's like, alright, well, I guess I won't be doing any thieving today, and I'll hang out with you, kid. Like, he has no reason to help out this child who shows up on this train with him, and he's just like, alright, kid, I'll help you out, whatever.
Oh, don't worry, I've got an idea. We can make us both invisible.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
You want to root for him, and there's lots of really great physical gags with him and in the fight scenes. It gave me some real Jackie Chan vibes in some of the jokes that they're writing into these scenes. No one in this movie is anyone you should root for. Maybe the kid.
Maybe the kid,
But everyone else is kind of a monster, especially the gambling woman, the teacher.
You hate kids so much, why do you bother working here? Hey, I don't hate them. I despise the little shitheads.
When she shows up in this movie, she is teaching a class full of children, and she's gambling with them and beating them. A horrible woman, and gets the crap kicked out of her. And it continues throughout the movie. She just gets thrown out of windows. She gets her face bashed in. She gets headbutted. She gets thrown around. And she deserves it. So you laugh at it the entire time.
Yes.
I've gotta shut her up.
And she's one of the heroes of the movie.
And, like, she doesn't really learn anything except, like, to help out this kid, which she was kind of doing anyway by letting the kid and the robber stay at her apartment.
They sort of make her do anything that she does because she's going to sell him out.
Right, yes.
And then when things backfire on her, she's like, well, you guys deal with it. And they're like, nope. And they take her.
Coming with.
Yeah. So I don't know if she even really has an arc in this.
Sure, yeah.
I loved the detail about her having a picture of herself, like a life-size picture of herself, holding cards, as if she's like a celebrity gambler of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like the kind of poster pose that you would have from like a magician, maybe a close-up magician with the like fans of cards, and like a fun outfit to match.
Like, she got this professionally done at some point. For what reason?
Are there more of those out there? Like, were they for sale somewhere? No, there's so many questions.
I love that she has it on the door that opens up to the mirror where she can see herself.
Which is just a mirror.
If anything happens to the living Buddha, you'll have me to deal with too.
All right, you can beat me as well then.
Oh, I'm not gonna beat you. I'll kill you.
One of my favorite characters, if not my favorite character in this movie, was the Buddhist priest. He is protecting the living Buddha, who's the little kid, and he ends up getting killed really early on. And he continues to show up through the movie as a ghost, and he'll just state these things really matter-of-factly. Like, he'd be like, oh, by the way, you have some new powers now. Okay.
But I fear you're still in danger, so I'll give you some powers.
He'll show up on the TV and freak out the woman at her apartment.
That bit was hilarious. 'Cause, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff with like her pointing to the TV or pointing at him, and his gaze, he's always looking at where her finger is, so like it was really well choreographed.
He's like trying to bite her finger at one point.
Oh, so good.
Line of the movie, though.
Yes, I'm going to teach you another trick. A trick that will help you save that bitch over there. Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't call that bitch a bitch.
So good.
It's like 85% delivery.
When he's tossing that kid around, from the very first shot of him throwing the kid and he becomes this Muppet. And throughout the movie, this kid will suddenly transform into like a Cabbage Patch doll. Hilarious. And I don't think it was supposed to be that goofy looking.
No, oh no, there's no way. I would bet money that was like what they could do, and they were on a time crunch. And it's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
He turns into like a backpack, and Cynthia Rothrock is carrying him around like Luke with Yoda on his back.
Well, I kept thinking about there's a really funny bad lip reading with Yoda called Seagulls.
Yeah.
And he's like singing about like I can be a backpack while you run, and I'm like, that is going on in my head while Cynthia Rothrock is carrying around this Cabbage Patch Kid on her back.
Run, 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 jump. I can be a backpack while you run. Run, 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 jump, and stop. Put me down.
The kid in this was apparently like really game for everything.
Yeah, I guess he was really like nice and polite, and was really good about being like handled and thrown around and stuff, because as much as the Cabbage Patch doll doubled for him, there are scenes where he's clearly the one being like chucked from one place to the next or swung around or whatever. And I mean, wow, good for that kid, because I would probably have been bawling my eyes out.
There's a part where he goes up to a car and there's a missing persons or a wanted sign
it's
on
like
there, as if people
$50,000 reward for this kid. Or something.
Yeah, as if people just tape those to cars randomly.
Yeah, sure, why not?
That's very strange. Or when the kid will just state things, like, oh, well, I don't believe you, in this British woman voice they decided to give him.
Yes, it's so good.
Of course, when I'm in the money, I'll help everyone out. And since I'll be doing good, well, I'm sure that it's allowed. But I don't believe you.
Cynthia Rothrock's voice is really funny.
Yeah, really disconcerting if you know what she actually sounds like.
She does have a lot higher voice than what they use. She sounds a little bit more like this.
Yeah.
And in this, it's like, hey, big boy, what's going on?
Very husky.
Hey, take it easy.
It switches between that and like Mrs. Doubtfire telling a story kind of voice.
I will have to test you first for at least 2 or 3 days.
Very jarring, and I don't know how well it fits that character either.
Not very well. But, and yet, maybe it doesn't fit, but it does kind of make it more excellent.
And it's a good contrast to the gambler lady's voice, because she's constantly screaming all the time, ah! And then all right, well, I've got to train him and see. I don't know, I'm turning into something else there, but.
No, well, I think you really hit on something there. There probably was, and I've never really dug into the nitty gritty of the dubbing world, but I do know that dubbers in Hong Kong, you kind of. You'd sort of get your stock character voices in your head. So you'd be like, this is the landlord character, this is whatever, and that's your sort of stock character that you go to. But I think one of the key elements, this certainly was true of like radio back in the day, was that particularly when you had a small group of actors, you really needed that vocal contrast so that you didn't have two characters who were hanging out together who had basically the same voice. With films, it's a little bit easier because at least you can see that they're different, but at the same time, it's worth going out of your way maybe to make those voices sort of distinct. And probably, again, I don't think there was a lot of reverence for original voices. Well, in fact, there wouldn't have been because they would have shot this without sound anyway. So it's not like the dubbers would have heard the original audio from the set and gone, oh, Cynthia Rothrock sounds more like this, I should probably do that. They were like, the lines are this, and I have silence in front of me, so I'm going to give her this voice.
And that's why you would end up with a lot of really cartoonish sounding voices too, especially for the peripheral or the background characters. Mm-hmm. Like there's a part where Cynthia Rothrock's fighting in the park with the goons, and then these people in the background like, look, over there, they're fighting!
Look over there, they're fighting!
Yeah, you got the voice down.
It's maybe my favorite voice in the film.
Hey, look at that, they're fighting.
I liked the guy who was one of the loan sharks who's like, go!
Go! What do you mean?
Go!
One thing I found really funny was the fact that you've got Cynthia Rothrock, who is blonde and Caucasian and a monk, and Jeff Falcon, who is blonde, like bleach blonde and Caucasian and a monk, amongst all these other monks, some of whom I understand were like actually like real monks at this location to play extras and stuff.
Okay.
But like no one comments on that, like the fact that like no one's like, you're from the United States, but for reasons you're the one who needs to, like they're not even commenting on it.
I would understand it a little more if it was a guy, but especially with Cynthia Rothrock, it's not common for a monk to be a woman.
Right, and what's funny is that actually that apparently caused a little bit of turmoil on location.
Did it?
Because there were locals who were like, what the hell is this like white woman doing in monk's attire? And ditto for the guy, and Ching-Ying, who plays the original protector who dies to save the kid early on, like he's on set probably looking more the type, but between takes he's like hanging out smoking cigarettes and stuff. Like just total disregard for custom and protocol.
You know what, like I'm kind of glad to know that about that guy, that's kind of what he was like out of character, just like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry, I shouldn't call that bitch a bitch.
I found that was very weird that they didn't acknowledge that, and I'm curious, and maybe this is something that you found out, if it was originally intended for a woman or a Westerner, that part.
I believe it was originally intended for Cynthia Rothrock, and that's kind of why I was trying to sort of suss that out, because I thought, well, maybe this was like, maybe it was a Michelle Yeoh movie originally, or maybe like they hadn't cast it, but they were assuming, but they happen to have Cynthia Rothrock available from some other film, but apparently no. Like they're just like, we're just not even going to comment on it. There was apparently a subplot that got cut that sort of explains some of the evil monks, and that originally Jeff Falcon's character and the other bad monks, they were originally good monks who were protecting the Golden Child, but they came under the influence of the bad guy who hypnotized them. And there was supposed to be a bit where Cynthia Rothrock and Jeff Falcon are fighting. Jeff Falcon kind of comes out of his daze or his hypnotism and he's like, hey, why am I fighting you? And is convinced, oh no, you're still a good guy, you're still fighting for the Golden Child or whatever. She's the bad one. And he's like, oh.
Was he the one that had the Guess fashion shirt on?
Yes. The best fashion.
And that, of course, means the end of the living Buddha and the beginning of my rule over these new dark ages. Really great. We
gotta talk about the villain.
Yeah.
This is clearly like a knockoff of the Golden Child villain. Mm-hmm. What was he like in the Golden Child?
He was a demon. I mean, most of the time he was Charles Dance in like a in an overcoat or something. But at the very end, he turns into like sort of a winged demon, sort of claymation kind of deal.
And that's kind of what's going on with this character in this. And he's got the same motivations. He wants to tempt the kid, the living Buddha, to drink his blood so that it will taint him and he'll lose his powers and he can kill him.
Right.
And throughout the whole thing, he's got these bat mannerisms where he's got like the shadow and he's flapping around. And at one point, he becomes a Batman.
He's got like wings on his head. In addition to whatever his cape's doing.
And he throws his cape and then his cape becomes bats.
Animated bats, yeah.
Man, this villain, he could not have bungled this harder if he tried. He's so bad at being a villain. Like,
But he's having such a good time.
It's really great!
He makes his own fun.
Yeah, yes.
It's through this watch plot device with the world's biggest wristwatch, getting him out of this trance and turning him into the living Buddha, and he gets rid of him and he falls down into hell. It's kind of like the entire movie. It's half funny intentionally and half unintentionally funny.
Yeah, you never really know where the line is.
He's falling across this blue screen and kind of like, oh, this is okay. It's not okay.
It's a little like Alice in Wonderland-y, like in the Disney one where she like falls down the rabbit hole and you just see the background just like going behind her. I mean, it's like the riffing on that.
Some of it I found was interesting visuals, like him just breaking through the mirror.
Yeah.
I thought was interesting. And there's lots of different cuts through it, which is better than just like, here's someone on a blue screen going, ah.
Wow, bungee jumping without a bungee. That could be dangerous.
Yeah, got that.
And he ends up landing in this sort of horrifying scene in hell with all of these dead people crawling at him.
Yeah, in mud or some sort of gunk.
He asks for mercy and the little Buddha is gonna save him. Immediately, like 2 seconds later, it's like, ha, get out of my way, I'm gonna go up here. Oh, well, you're still a jerk. Snip, gone.
Trapped in hell forever.
He couldn't have pretended for 2 seconds. Not very smart, this guy.
Nope. It's because it's his destiny, as the kid says, to be stuck in hell forever.
Really great!
One of the things that you really liked, I know, was the production design and stuff, and apparently like that whole big temple set at the end looked really bad in person, but looked really good on camera.
Really?
And part of that was due to the fact that they were like filling it with smoke, and the smoke was like burning car tires.
What?
Because there was no health and safety regulations then and there, so they were just filling it with burning tire smoke, and the cast and crew would like leave the set at the end of the day, like coughing and sneezing up black gunk.
God, so that's awful.
Yeah, I'd be glad you weren't there.
And doing a bunch of fight scenes too.
Absolutely. Kind of going back to this issue of like, we didn't plan this out very well. Although there may have been some sort of pre-designed fight sequences, a lot of it really was made up on the fly by the core stunt team. You know, there was an action director, and then there was this like a small group of stunt people who did like, you know, all the stunts. I believe in some cases that Cynthia Rothrock even was doubled, which may have been for more dangerous stunts, or may have simply been because they didn't have her as much as they thought they were going to have her, so they're, you know, doubling her for something. But it really was very like, oh shit, we gotta get this done. We gotta, like, oh, this is, you know what, let's keep it going. And so there was stuff that was scripted that wasn't filmed. There was some stuff that maybe was scripted and filmed but didn't end up coming together the way that they wanted. I mean, it really felt like kind of a rush to get it done. So what ends up happening is that because they don't have as much of Cynthia Rothrock as they thought, originally Conan Lee's character was supposed to be just kind of the bumbling, well-meaning thief character who is trying to protect the kid but doesn't have kind of the physical wherewithal to do it. But they still have all of this action to do, so they kind of come up with this idea on the spot where Lam Ching-Ying's character, the guy who was originally protecting the Prince of the Sun, possesses the hero, possesses Conan Lee's character, and gives him his fighting abilities so that he can do some of these fights as well, which, I mean, the actor was perfectly capable of doing, but was not originally designed to do.
That's crazy, because I thought that was an interesting element of it anyway.
Yeah.
To add that in, so I would never think it was something they just had to come up with to get more fight scenes in there. And what ends up happening too is that he really becomes the main character. I think he's the one who has the most story. He's the one that ends up kind of having the arc in the movie. And having sort of a turnaround by the end, even though he has a heart of gold.
Right, which he will tell anybody at the beginning of the film.
I'm gonna be a robber, but I'm a good guy, really.
And he's the one that's taking care of the kid and that brings him to this woman's apartment, and she's just trying to throw them out the whole time. So really, he is sort of the main character in this movie, and Cynthia Rothrock is sort of a supporting character in the end.
Yeah, I see that she's very prominent here.
Yeah, you were saying that, like, apparently this was photos that they were using as a reference of her.
Yeah, and so, like, because the first time we watched this, we were like, what is with this, like, buff Cynthia Rothrock, like, masculine arm there? Because,
it looks like it was taken from, like, Jean-Claude Van Damme or something.
Yeah, totally. But just kind of hunting a little bit, I found that there is a photo of her from this movie where she's doing that pose, and best guess is that they were like, well, it's fine, but let's beef her up a little bit. So they kind of, like, they did it as, like, a painting, and, like, drew over it or, copied it or whatever, and then gave her all this extra musculature and her mighty thews.
Well, one reference they were definitely stealing on this cover is Skeletor.
Skeletor, who is
from
absolutely
Masters of the Universe.
100% in this movie. Yeah, Frank Langella as Skeletor. I wasn't expecting him, but, like, there he is in the third act.
I don't know if I have anything to back this up, but I feel like spiritually that movie and this movie kind of go hand in hand.
You know what? I would thoroughly enjoy that as a double feature. You get the idea that whoever designed this poster was like, all right, so, like, the actual bat guy villain with his bat wing heads and his, like, goofy, like, kind of dog mask kind of face, I don't know if it's quite scary enough. So we can either make him, like, try to redraw him to be scary, or, hey, there's a poster of Masters of the Universe. Or here's a picture of Masters of the Universe. That kind of looks like our guy. Let's just draw that. It'll be fine.
You could draw him like he is in the movie and make him look better than the movie. Like, you don't have to draw him exact. Cynthia Rothrock's not exact on this cover. When I first watched this, I watched it back to back with The Golden Child. And my reaction to these, because I'd never seen The Golden Child before, was the opposite of what I expected. Because I thought that I would really enjoy The Golden Child, and this would be like, oh, it's a knockoff, but it's kind of fun B-movie stuff. And The Golden Child wasn't a good movie. It was so mean-spirited.
Shut up!
And just kind of icky.
Chunky asses.
And you could tell there were production problems that they didn't really overcome. Like, the tone is really strange. This got the comedy stuff down way better than The Golden Child did. Like, I laughed my ass off at this movie.
Yeah, me too.
Look at that.
I had basically the same experience. I had seen Golden Child for the first time a number of years ago and just remembered liking it fairly well. And then, recently I watched this for the first time and was like, oh, this is great. I was expecting it to be kind of fun, but I really enjoyed it, and I thought, okay, well, I want to rewatch Golden Child to see and have them closer temporally in my head. And I'm rewatching it, I'm like, this movie's not very good. Like, Eddie Murphy is like, he's like, you were sort of saying he's kind of phoning it in, and he is.
Oh shit.
Some of the humor is really kind of like offensive, and he's not really a likable character.
The woman, his love interest, was a better character.
Was probably like the best character in that film, and she is totally sidelined.
And Eddie Murphy is not good at phoning performances in. No. Like, you can tell
as his later career has, I think, proven.
And, like, this is weird saying this for someone who got their big start doing live sketch stuff. He's not very good at improv either.
From my heart, kiss my ass. Kiss my ass!
There's such a heavy reliance on improv in that movie, and you can tell what's improv because it's terrible.
There's even stuff that, like, seems to have been maybe improv in post-production that still isn't good, even though they had the time. One of the last lines in that movie is, they've saved the kid and they're walking off into the sunset. We're gonna make a bunch of money with this kid. We can go on TV. You ever seen Star Search? Oh, you probably haven't seen Star Search. They don't have Star Search in Tibet. They probably got Food Search.
You ever hear Ed McMahon's Star Search? Do they have Star Search in Tibet? Probably not. Probably have Food Search.
Anyway, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, You did not just say that. Was like, it was also like they're walking into the distance, so this is clearly ADR. He's not Mike. This came up after the fact, and I'm like, are you kidding me?
Well, is it better or worse than the ending line of The Prince of the Sun?
But of course, to become a llama, you'll have to have all your hair shaved off. No hair?
I thought that was a joke good enough to end this movie on.
It is. It's not funny, but it's not offensive.
Yeah. Well, that was Golden Child's last line offensive or just not funny?
The food search thing is pretty offensive, I'd say. It's just like making fun of the fact that they don't have, that it's a poor country.
Oh, I see. I get it now.
Yeah. Isn't it hysterical?
Yeah.
They're poor over there.
How does Golden Child come off more mean-spirited than a movie about beating up a woman mostly? Like, she gets most of the beating up, though the guy gets his fair share of beatings in it too, and the child.
Yeah.
So, a movie that is primarily based around just abuse of everyone is somehow less offensive than Golden Child was to me.
Mm-hmm.
One of her ancestors was raped by a dragon.
Does that happen a lot where you're from?
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't call that bitch a bitch.
Would you recommend this movie for people?
Hell yes. And the fact that it is also available on a Blu-ray, like of all of the like Hong Kong action sort of silly cinema that is out there, like comedy action cinema that's out there, Prince of the Sun gets an amazing like 1080p Blu-ray release with dual audio tracks and so like. Yes, please.
I gotta thank Matthew Buck for giving this to me, by the way. Like, this was just a gift, like, you like Cynthia Rothrock, so here you go. So, thank you, Matthew. And, I would totally recommend it to people, too. I think it's really funny, some of it intentionally, some not, and that's really hard to find a so bad it's good comedy. And I think that this is the perfect example of that. But it's also got good action scenes, so it's some good martial arts in this as well.
When they're not forgetting about Cynthia Rothrock, they are utilizing her like 100%.
So check it out, guys. You'll have a good time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't call that bitch a bitch.